He thought grabbing a teacher by the throat would scare her. He didn't know she used to run military police units. When a spoiled HOA bully attacks her in the school lab, he triggers a chain reaction that will obliterate his future, expose his mother's corruption, and leave an entire community in shock that my name is Scott Summers. And until last Tuesday, the biggest problem in my life was a stubborn bookshelf I couldn't get to stand straight. It's almost funny now how small that problem was, compared to everything that would come crashing into our lives. That I was in my workshop, sanding down a piece of oak that refused to behave. My phone buzzed against the workbench, dancing in a swirl of sawdust. The screen lit up, pulsing deep high school. My wife Jane teaches chemistry there. I didn't panic. Honestly, I groaned. She probably forgot her lunch again, I thought. But when I picked up, it wasn't Jane's voice. It was the vice principal, a man who always sounded like someone just backed into his car. "Mr. Summers, can you come to the school immediately? There's been an incident." Incident. The word schools use when they don't want to get sued yet. I wiped my hands, grabbed my keys, and drove like hell. The school was only 10 minutes away. It felt like an hour. My mind raced through every possibility. Chemical spill? Student accident? Equipment failure? Never, not once, did I imagine the truth. When I arrived, they didn't take me to her classroom. They led me to a small office near the nurse's station. Jane was sitting in a hard plastic chair, holding a cup of water, looking calm. Too calm. That scared me more than anything. She looked up, gave me the kind of smile people give when they want to pretend everything is fine. "Scott, you didn't have to come." I looked at her neck. My blood froze. There were red finger marks. Fresh. Angry. Human fingers. I spun toward the vice principal. "What?" "It happened." Jane answered instead. "A student became aggressive," she said, like she was describing a minor lab experiment gone wrong. He put his hands on my throat. I felt a cold fire ignite in my stomach. "Who?" She didn't even blink. "Cole Jameson. Of course. 6'2" senior. Thinks he's untouchable because he can throw a football 70 yards. Son of the most powerful, petty, vindictive woman in our neighborhood. Karen Jameson. The tyrannical, self-appointed queen of the HOA. If Satan had a Pinterest board, it would be titled Goals, with a picture of her face. "Why?" I asked, though I already knew. Jane sighed. "He wanted me to change his midterm grade. And you said no." "Of course." And then, she turned her head slightly, revealing more red marks I hadn't seen. "He followed me into the prep room, cornered me, told me nobody was coming to help me. Then he grabbed my throat." My hands curled into fists. "When he grabbed me," Jane continued, "I used a standard wrist peel escape. Minimal force. He stumbled back. I stepped away, called 911. That's my wife. 20 years of military police. Calm. Precise. Always controlled." The vice principal coughed weakly. "The student claims Mrs. Summers was the aggressor." I stared at him. Jane, 5 feet 6 inches, built like a librarian. Cole, 6 feet 2 inches, built like a linebacker. Right. We were escorted to the main office to give statements. The temperature seemed to drop as we walked in. Because there she was, sitting in a padded chair like it was a throne. Karen Jameson. Red blazer. Sharp eyes. An expression like she smelled something rotten. Next to her, Cole, pretending to nurse his wrist with a dramatic little ice pack. Karen pointed at us like she was accusing a witch at a medieval trial. There she is. Her voice was loud enough to crack glass. "The teacher who assaulted my son." Jane didn't react. She simply sat down. Karen wasn't done. "My honor roll, football scholarship son. She attacked him. Look at his wrist. He may not be able to play in the championship now." I looked at Cole's wrist. It wasn't swollen. It wasn't red. He looked like he was trying not to cry, not from pain, but from embarrassment. The nurse came in with a clipboard. "Cole Jameson has mild redness consistent with having his grip released. No sprain. No injury." Karen's face twitched. "And Mrs. Summers," the nurse continued, "has petechial hemorrhaging on her neck, consistent with being grabbed by the throat." You could hear a pin drop. Then Karen spat. "Those could be from anything. Allergies. A necklace." The nurse sighed. "They are shaped like fingerprints, Mrs. Jameson." Before Karen could explode, the school resource officer stepped forward. Additionally, the prep room camera caught the incident. We have the footage secured as evidence. Cole shrank in his chair. Karen's eyes darted fast. For a split second, just a flicker, she looked afraid. Then she regained her mask. "This is a conspiracy," she hissed, "and I will destroy anyone who tries to ruin my son's future." She aimed that at us, especially Jane. The principal looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. "Jane, due to procedure, you will be placed on administrative leave until the investigation is complete." Paid leave, but still a leave. "Cole, you gotta go back to class." The bully injured the victim, and the victim was punished. Karen smiled smugly. As we walked out of the school, she called after us. "Oh, and Scott, your grass is looking a little long. I'll be checking." That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just a school issue. This was about to become a war. A petty, vindictive, ruthless HOA war. And we were the targets. The next morning, a crisp white envelope on my truck windshield. HOA violation notice fine. $50 reason. Grass taller than 3.5 inches in 3 separate patches. The grass was normal. Perfectly normal. Jane read the notice, quietly sipped her coffee, and said nothing, which meant she was furious. That evening, a second notice. Trash bins are visible for more than 4 hours. A lie. The next morning, Karen parked across the street staring at us from her car window. She waved. Not friendly. The "I own you" wave. We ignored her. She escalated. 2 HOA committee members knocked aggressively. They spent 20 minutes measuring our house trim to check if it was the approved shade of sandstone. Then came the Facebook smear campaign. "Dear neighbors, please be aware of aggressive behavior happening around our children." She was never named Jane. She didn't have to. She poisoned the well, and the neighborhood lapped it up. Every notification made my blood boil. But Jane? Jane closed the laptop. "Noise," she said. Nothing more. Except it wasn't. Because 2 nights later, a dark sedan crept slowly down our street at midnight. Stopped. Paused. Then drove off. The message was clear. They weren't just trying to annoy us anymore. They were trying to intimidate us. The next morning, Jane set her coffee cup down with a sharp click. "If she wants to play by the rules," she said calmly, "then we will play by every rule." I stared. That tone. That was Major Summers. Her military side. And when that version of my wife showed up, God help whoever stood against her. We went to Home Depot. Bought the most expensive laser-guided digital tape measure they sold. Then, in full view of Karen's house, we measured every inch of grass before mowing. And again after mowing. And again after edging. I swear I saw her curtains twitch. We mailed a laminated compliance report to the HOA. Certified mail. I read the entire 250-page HOA covenant. I found every rule Karen herself broke. Her roses? Prohibited species. Her dog flag? Unapproved flag type. Her porch lights? 10 watts over the limit. So I printed each violation, laminated them, and taped them, very gently, to her fence, pole, and porch. Then came the cameras. We upgraded everything. And since Karen was clearly watching us, we put on a show. Every morning, as I left the house, I narrated into my own security camera. Observe the middle-aged man leaving his home. Note the compliance-length grass and properly stowed trash bins. Jane played along. While watering flowers, she'd say, "Hydrating HOA-approved flora. Water usage within community standards." We saved every clip, every joke, every petty act of rebellion. And it felt good, really good. 2 nights later, I checked a new camera angle and saw something that made my stomach drop. An HOA committee member, the same man who measured our trim, sneaking onto our lawn at night. He sprinkled something from a garden store bag onto the grass. 2 days later, that patch of lawn was dead. Then a violation notice arrived. Failure to maintain a healthy lawn. Fine, $150. They weren't enforcing rules anymore. They were creating violations just to fine us. I showed the footage to Jane. Her smile faded. "Okay," she said quietly. "The joke phase is over. Observation. Detection. Evidence," she murmured. She drew a diagram of our property. It looked like a tactical battlefield map. We repositioned cameras. High-angle eaves camera, hidden birdhouse camera on the gate, garden gnome camera on the driveway, street view camera for all cars. Then, she reached into a footlocker she hadn't opened in years. Inside, military gear, old badges, and a small bottle. "What's that?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "UV thief detection powder. Invisible. Sticks to skin for days. Glows bright under blacklight." We dusted the front gate latch. Anyone who touched it would carry the evidence everywhere they went. "Now," Jane said, "we wait." It happened faster than we expected. Thursday night, 11:06 p.m. My phone buzzed. Motion alert. I opened the live camera feed. My breath caught. A figure in a hoodie crept up our driveway. Cole. He looked nervous but determined, like a dumb criminal reenacting a TikTok prank. He reached for the gate. His hand pressed squarely on the latch. I whispered to Jane. He touched it. The floodlight activated. He jumped like a rabbit, dropped the spray paint can, and ran for his life. We watched him trip over his own feet and sprint into the darkness. Jane exhaled slowly. Cole had no idea that the moment he touched that gate latch, his night, and ultimately his life, changed forever. He didn't know about the invisible powder. He didn't know his fingerprints were now glowing like a radioactive Christmas tree under UV light. He didn't know the cameras caught every angle of his little midnight mission. But someone else did. Jane. After Cole ran off, she turned to me with that calm, precise voice she used when she was still wearing a uniform. "Scott," she said, "this was only the opening act." And she was right. Because exactly 5 minutes later, our cameras picked up something far worse. A dark sedan returned to our street. No headlights this time. Just a slow, predatory crawl toward our home. It stopped directly in front of our driveway. And it didn't move. I felt something cold run down my spine. This wasn't Cole. This wasn't teenagers being stupid. This was something dangerous. Two silhouettes sat inside the sedan. Motionless. Watching. Waiting. Jane leaned forward, eyes narrowing. She wasn't frightened. She was assessing. Calculating. I had seen that look before. Once, years ago, when some drunk idiot started a fight outside a bar. She didn't get loud or panicked. She simply shifted into a different mode. A mode most people never experience. A mode that says, "I am not the victim here." One of the men finally stepped out of the car. Big, heavy jacket. Hood up. He scanned our house with slow, deliberate movements. The second man got out next. He popped the trunk and pulled out something long and dark. At first, I prayed it was just a tool. It wasn't. It was a baseball bat. A thick, black aluminum one. The kind that makes a ringing clang when it connects with anything. I grabbed my phone immediately. 911. What's your emergency? While I spoke with the dispatcher, Jane moved like a shadow. No panic. No wasted motion. She went to the hall closet, opened her small biometric safe, and retrieved her old duty pistol. A Sig Sauer P229. Her movements were so smooth, it almost looked like slow motion. Magazine check. Chamber check. Safety check. Decocker. Everything done in silence. Everything done with the confidence of someone who had handled weapons longer than most people had handled their phones. "Get low," she told me. No movement in front of the windows. I ducked behind the staircase railings as the first man walked up our driveway. The second man stayed near the car, gripping the bat like he was itching to use it. The one near the house had a flashlight. He shined it across our porch, our plants, the mailbox, everywhere. Jane watched him from the side of the house, hidden in the dark. "This isn't a scare tactic anymore," she whispered. "This is escalation." The man with the bat suddenly raised it above his shoulder and swung at our mailbox. The metallic crack echoed through the entire street like a gunshot. The mailbox caved in instantly. The man laughed. Not a normal laugh. A mean, empty laugh. The kind of sound people make when they feel invincible. And then the worst part happened. The man with the flashlight reached for something at his waist and pulled out a gun. A small black handgun. He didn't aim at our house. He aimed at the mailbox and fired. The muzzle flash lit the entire street in a burst of orange light. The bullet ripped through what was left of our mailbox and ricocheted off the pavement with a high-pitched metallic scream. That sound. It's not like movies. It's sharper, colder. It makes your stomach drop because instinctively you know there's no coming back from that if it hits you. On the 911 call, the dispatcher's voice changed immediately. "Sir, officers are en route. Stay inside." But Jane had already moved. She wasn't in the living room anymore. She wasn't beside me. She was outside, low, crouched, positioned at the corner of the house with the brick wall protecting her. She angled herself carefully, pistol braced in a two-handed grip. She didn't say a word. She didn't yell a warning. She waited. The two men started walking back to their car, still laughing. They had no idea that the woman standing in the shadows had put down men twice their size on actual deployment. They thought they were scaring us. They were just giving Jane the cleanest legal case she'd ever seen. And then she acted. Too sharp, Controlled cracks split through the night. Not wild shots. Not panic fire. Two deliberate, perfectly placed shots. The first bullet hit the front tire. The second hit the rear tire. Air exploded outward in a violent hiss. The car sagged instantly on its rims. The two men froze. They didn't know where the shots came from. They dove into their dying car and tried to speed off. But with two flat tires, the sedan could barely hobble. All it could do was screech down the road, grinding sparks off the pavement like a wounded animal trying to flee. Jane stepped back into the house quietly, holstered her pistol, and waited with me as sirens finally pierced the night. The police arrived. Then more police. Then detectives. Then forensic techs. Our street looked like the set of a crime drama. And when they reviewed our footage, even they were stunned. The detective in charge, Miller, watched the videos 3 times in silence. Once of the mailbox being smashed. Once of the gun firing. Once of Jane's precise shots. When the final clip ended, he shook his head. In 20 years, he said, I've never had evidence this clean. But a storm was still coming. Because while Detective Miller was processing the scene, an email arrived. From the school district. A disciplinary hearing notice for Jane. Suspended. Not with pay. Without pay. Indefinite. Why? Because Karen had filed a complaint accusing Jane of being unstable, violent, aggressive, and dangerous to students. Karen claimed the shooting incident was proof. She flipped it. She twisted the fact that armed men came to attack us and used it as fake evidence that Jane was mentally unbalanced. The system swallowed her lie whole. When I read the email out loud, Jane didn't blink. She just inhaled and exhaled slowly. But I knew her well enough to see what others didn't. This wasn't calm. This was rage being held in place by discipline. Detective Miller overheard the email. He stopped scribbling in his notebook and looked up sharply. They're suspending her, he said. Yes, I replied. He glanced at the footage again, then at the email. Absolutely not, he muttered. This isn't just wrong. This is coordinated. He leaned closer. Mr. Summers, do not respond to that email. Do not talk to the school. Do not post anything online. Let them walk straight into their own trap. He tapped the TV screen, showing the gunman firing at our mailbox. You have the truth. They have lies. Lies collapse when you give them weight. And collapse they did. Just not yet. Because before the school could attack Jane at the hearing, Karen made her biggest mistake. She called an emergency HOA meeting to address violent residents threatening community peace. In other words, she planned to publicly execute our reputation before the district hearing. But she didn't know that the trap was already set, or that Detective Miller would show up at the meeting, or that we had every second of evidence ready to explode in her face. But that comes soon, because before the meeting, something important happened. A knock at our door. Not a violent one. A timid, embarrassed one. When I opened it, a teenage girl stood on our porch. I recognized her. She was in Jane's class, a quiet kid named Lila who always sat near the windows. She clutched her phone in both hands like it was a life preserver. Mr. Summers, she whispered, I have something you need to see. She pulled up a video. It was taken inside the school cafeteria the day after the lab assault. Cole bragging, laughing, telling his friends he grabbed the teacher by the throat, and she freaked out. One of his friends asked if he was worried about getting caught. Cole replied, My mom's got the principal on a leash. She'll take care of it. The girl looked up at me with scared, apologetic eyes. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't show anyone. I was afraid. But Mrs. Summers is the kindest teacher I have. She doesn't deserve this. Jane placed her hand gently on the girl's shoulder. You did the right thing, she said. And that video? It would become important later. Very important. But even without it, we already had more than enough firepower. Still, we had no idea that the HOA meeting was going to be the most explosive moment of all. Because Karen Jameson wasn't preparing a simple smear speech. She was preparing a public execution. A vote to evict us from our home. A vote to strip us of community rights. A vote to paint Jane as a psychopath. And she didn't know. We were bringing the truth. And truth is louder than lies. Especially when you play it on a giant HOA projector in front of 200 people. The HOA meeting was scheduled for Saturday evening at 6 p.m. A perfect time for maximum attendance. Convenient for Karen. Inconvenient for everyone else. Typical. But it didn't matter. Because this wasn't going to be her night. It was going to be the night everything she built came crashing down. When we walked toward the community center, people watched us from their lawn chairs, from driveways, from windows. The neighborhood had been buzzing all day. Rumors had spread like wildfire, most of them planted by Karen. Dangerous couple. Violent teacher. Gunfire at their house. Unstable behavior. Funny how rumors work. They're loud when fueled by fear, but they go silent the moment truth shows up. And the truth was coming. Inside the community center, the atmosphere was thick and electric. Chairs were lined up in tight rows. Most were already filled. Whispering neighbors craned their necks when we walked in. Phones flashed up instantly. Text messages flew. People nudged their friends. Karen stood at the front of the room wearing a white blazer, pearl necklace, and that smug expression she saved for special occasions, like ruining someone's life. Her son Cole sat beside her with a fake sling on his wrist. He looked miserable, but his mother looked ready to devour the room. When she saw us, her smile sharpened. "Ah," she said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "The guests of honor." We didn't respond. Detective Miller arrived a minute later. Not in uniform, plain clothes, but that didn't matter. His badge clipped to his belt did enough talking. Karen saw him, and for the first time, her smile wavered. The HOA board members shuffled papers nervously. They weren't expecting law enforcement. Karen regained her composure, smoothed her blazer, and tapped the microphone. "Good evening, neighbors. Thank you for coming. As you all know, we've had a very serious situation arise within our community." She paused and looked at us like she was about to unveil a sacrifice. "The safety of our neighborhood has been threatened by violent and unstable behavior exhibited by one of our own residents, Mrs. Jane Summers." Gasps spread through the crowd. She continued, her voice laced with practiced sympathy. "She assaulted a student. Even worse, she fired a gun in a residential area. This is unacceptable. We must act to protect our children." She placed her hand on Cole's shoulder. "My son has been traumatized, physically and emotionally." Cole stared at the floor, cheeks flushed. This was humiliation for him, too. But he still didn't speak, because he didn't dare contradict his mother. "And so," Karen said, "I am calling for an emergency vote to classify the Summers household as a threat to community security and begin proceedings for their forced removal from the neighborhood." Murmurs filled the room. A man in the back stood. "Do we even have the authority to do that?" Karen smiled. "We do tonight." I adjusted the meeting agenda. Translation: she rewrote the rules without permission. Before anyone else could object, she gestured toward us. "Would you like to defend yourselves?" It wasn't a question. It was bait. She wanted us to argue emotionally, to lose control, to look unstable. Jane stood, but she didn't yell. She didn't argue. She didn't make any emotional statement. Instead, she opened a laptop on the projector table. Karen frowned. "This meeting is not for." Jane held up one finger. That tiny gesture shut the entire room down. Then she pressed play, and the truth began to speak. The screen came alive with crystal-clear camera footage. Our front yard on the night of the attack. The dark sedan. The men stepped out. The bat. The gun. The shot at our mailbox. The sparks. The video paused on the moment the muzzle flash lit the street. A wave of shock rippled through the audience. One neighbor whispered, "Dear God." Another said, "That's a firearm. That's a felony." Karen's face was drained of color. But Jane wasn't done. She clicked to the next clip. Cole sneaks up to our gate at night. His hand on the latch. The drop spray paint can. His panicked retreat. The crowd reacted instantly. "That's Cole. Is he vandalizing their property?" He lied. He said he didn't go near their house. Karen shot up from her chair. "This footage is taken out of context." "No," Detective Miller said calmly, stepping forward. "It isn't." Every head swiveled toward him. He folded his arms. "This footage is security evidence from an ongoing criminal investigation. The Summers household is the victim of stalking, property damage, reckless firearm discharge, and attempted intimidation." Someone in the crowd gasped out loud. Miller continued. "The two men who smashed their mailbox were hired by an unknown individual. We are currently tracing that connection." Karen opened her mouth to scream, but Jane clicked again. The cafeteria video played. Cole bragged about grabbing Jane by the throat, laughing about it, admitting his mother would take care of everything. If the room had been shocked before, now it was volcanic. Everyone stared at Karen and Cole like they were seeing them for the first time. Cole went pale as sour milk. Karen whispered, "Turn it off. Turn it off right now." But Jane clicked again. The prep room camera footage. Clear, undeniable video of Cole grabbing Jane by the throat. His fingers pressed into her skin. Her swift, controlled wrist peel. Her backing away with zero aggression. His attempt to move toward her again. The entire lie shattered in seconds. A woman in the front row whispered, "He attacked her." It wasn't even close. A man muttered, "We've been defending a bully." A teenager whispered loudly, "Damn, she handled him like a Marine." Jane didn't smile. She didn't need to. Truth was doing the work. She clicked one last time. Our destroyed mailbox. The bullet hole. The casings recovered. The police investigation markers. Detective Miller addressed the audience. Mrs. Summers fired 2 legally justified shots at the tires of a vehicle fleeing a gun crime. Her actions helped prevent further harm to the neighborhood. There is no legal case against her. None. Dead silence. Then someone clapped. A single clap. Then another. Then half the room. Then the whole room. Not polite applause. Relieved applause. Supportive applause. Karen's face twisted into something inhuman. "This is all fabricated," she hissed. "All of you are being fooled." But nobody believed her anymore. The mask had fallen so hard it shattered. A board member stood and said, "Mrs. Jameson, based on this evidence, you are hereby removed from your position as HOA president effective immediately." Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't remove me." Another board member responded, "We just did." The audience murmured in agreement. Karen lunged toward the front table to grab the microphone. "That teacher is a menace. A liar. A manipulator. I will ruin." She froze mid-sentence. Detective Miller had stepped between her and the table. "Mrs. Jameson," he said quietly enough that only the front rows heard, "sit down." She didn't. She tried to push past him. Miller sighed. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and placed her under arrest. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed like thunder. Conspiracy. Harassment. Filing false police reports. Tampering with evidence. Intimidation. Contributing to a minor's delinquency. The list went on. Cole tried to stand, tears forming. Mom, I didn't mean." He didn't get to finish. Another officer stepped behind him. "Cole Jameson, you are being detained as part of an ongoing investigation." The boy sat back down as if his legs had stopped working. Neighbors who once defended him now stared with cold, stunned eyes. Karen was escorted out screaming. Not coherent screaming. Just a wild, furious sound. People moved aside like she was radioactive. And then, slowly, the room shifted focus back to us. A neighbor spoke first. "I'm sorry," she said. "We didn't know. We believed her lies." Another neighbor stepped forward. "You two didn't deserve any of this. If you ever need anything, you call us." Someone else added, "We're lucky Mrs. Summers was the one home that night. Anyone else would have been killed." By the end of the meeting, instead of being voted out, we left the building to a standing ovation. And the person who had spent years controlling the neighborhood with fear? She left in the back of a police cruiser. But the fallout was just beginning. Because after the meeting, the school district called, and they wanted to talk to Jane. But not to fire her. No, to apologize. That explosion is in the next part. The morning after the HOA meeting felt unreal. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. Not fearful quiet. Peaceful quiet. Like a storm had finally passed. For the first time in weeks, Jane made coffee without checking the windows. She took her mug outside, sat in her favorite chair, and watched the sunrise. It had been a long time since she allowed herself that moment. Then, right on cue, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Official tone. "Mr. Summers," the voice said. "This is Assistant Superintendent Halvorsen. We need to speak with your wife. Today." Immediately, my jaw tightened. "Is this about her suspension?" I asked. A pause. A long, uncomfortable pause. "It's about a great many things." I glanced at Jane through the window. She was sitting peacefully, sipping her coffee. The calm before a new kind of storm. "Send the address," I said. We drove to the district office. A large gray building. Big glass doors. A lobby with walls decorated in motivational posters and framed photos of smiling students. It would have felt wholesome on any other day. But today, something was off. People stared at us as we passed them. Not hostile. Not judgmental. More like guilty. The assistant superintendent's office was on the 3rd floor. When we stepped inside, 3 people were waiting. Assistant Superintendent Halvorsen, District HR Director, School Board Chairwoman. All 3 looked like they hadn't slept. Halvorsen cleared his throat. "Mrs. Summers, before we begin, We want to extend our apologies." Jane didn't sit. She just stood there calmly, hands clasped. "Why am I suspended?" she asked. Another long silence. The HR director opened a file, thick, messy, overstuffed. Most of it printed screenshots of emails, complaints, and accusations. "Mrs. Summers," he said, "we received a series of behavioral reports regarding you. Anonymous submissions. Claims that you were aggressive with students. Hostile. Unstable." Jane blinked once. "And you believe them?" The board chairwoman rubbed her temples. "These reports came from the PDA president, Karen Jameson." "Oh, of course." Karen had been poisoning the well long before the lab incident. She'd been building a false record against Jane weeks in advance. Halvorson sighed. "After last night's HOA meeting, Detective Miller came to us this morning. He showed us the footage. All of it. And he showed us something else." He tapped the file. This entire collection of complaints, every single one came from the same IP address. The address registered to Karen Jameson's home. The HR director looked like he wanted to crawl under his desk. "Mrs. Summers, we failed you. We allowed one woman's influence to override due process." He swallowed hard. "We are lifting your suspension immediately." The chairwoman leaned forward. "You have our apology and our gratitude. Your composure during everything, the assault, the lies, the threats, has been remarkable." Jane remained silent. Not cold, not angry, just controlled. "How long?" she asked. "Did you plan to keep this suspension in place without speaking to me?" None of the administrators could meet her eyes. "Too long," the chairwoman whispered. "And we intend to correct that." Then Halvorson took out a prepared letter, stamped, signed, official. "We would like to offer you two things," he said carefully. "One, a full exoneration, public, written, and distributed across all staff and parents. And two," he continued, "a promotion. A promotion. Assistant department chair." Jane stared at the letter, expression unreadable. "Why?" she asked. The room shifted uncomfortably again. The HR director spoke quietly. "Because the footage shows something we don't often see. In a moment where 99% of people would panic or freeze, you stayed calm. You defended yourself with minimal force. You protected your classroom. You called authorities. You handled yourself like someone trained to lead." He exhaled. "We need leaders like that in our schools." Jane finally sat down. Slowly, deliberately. "Will the school publicly acknowledge the truth about the incident?" she asked. "Yes," the board chairwoman replied instantly. "A full statement. Today." "And Cole Jameson?" Halvorson cleared his throat. "He's already been suspended pending investigation. The police may pursue charges. That's outside our authority now." Jane nodded once. "Then I accept." Relief washed over the room like a warm wave. When we walked out of the building, she finally let out a long, quiet breath. "That's done," she said. But it wasn't. Not yet. Because justice was still unfolding elsewhere. While Jane handled the school, Detective Miller was handling something bigger. By the time we got home, he was standing on our porch waiting for us. He held a folder thick with documents. "Thought I'd stop by," he said. "There's news." We invited him inside. He sat down at our kitchen table, flipped open the folder, and began reading notes. "First," he said, "the two men who attacked your house have confessed." I leaned forward. "What did they say?" Miller took out a printed statement. "They were paid cash by an unnamed party to send a message. Someone who told them they would be protected legally. Someone who promised them a bonus if you moved out within 30 days. Jane stared at the detective. "And that someone was?" Miller closed the folder. "We're still connecting the dots. But let's just say we're finding receipts. A lot of them." Then he added, "And the gun they used? Stolen. They're going away for a very long time." I felt tension leave my shoulders for the first time in days. "And Cole?" I asked. Miller nodded. "He's facing serious consequences. Breaking and entering. Attempted vandalism. Conspiracy. Plus the assault charge from the school." I rubbed my chin. "And Karen?" The detective smirked. "Let's just say she's the star of her own paperwork mountain." He leaned back in the chair. "She tried to file a counter-complaint last night, claiming you two shot at her son. But with all the evidence we have, her story fell apart before she finished her first sentence." He closed the folder again. "Her court date is in 2 weeks." Jane crossed her arms. "She'll blame everyone but herself." "Oh, she already has," Miller replied. "The moment we put cuffs on her, She said the entire neighborhood was conspiring against her. The school, the police, even the HOA board. He shook his head. She's unraveling. And he was right. Because later that same night, our neighborhood group chat exploded. Not with gossip. Not with attacks. With relief. Thank God this is over. I can finally walk my dog without getting fined. She made our lives miserable. We should have stood up to her sooner. She bullied half the street for years. This was justice. One neighbor posted a photo of the broken mailbox and wrote, "Heroes live on this street." Another neighbor, usually quiet, posted, "If Mrs. Summers hadn't been trained, those men might have shot someone. She saved us." The shift was surreal. For weeks, we'd been outcasts. Now we were admired. But that wasn't the part that hit hardest. What hit hardest was when a small group of neighbors came to our porch, holding a handmade sign. "Thank you, Jane." Jane opened the door, startled. The neighbors stood awkwardly, unsure what to say. Finally, a woman spoke. "Mrs. Summers, we're sorry. We let Karen control us for too long. We should have defended you sooner." Jane shook her head. "You didn't owe me anything." But tears were already forming in the woman's eyes. "You protected us," she whispered. "From her. And from those men. You didn't just protect your home. You protected all of us." Jane didn't know what to say, but she nodded. A quiet, humble acceptance. And for the first time, it felt like the neighborhood wasn't just a place we lived. It felt like a community. 2 weeks passed faster than we expected. The neighborhood calmed. Our cameras never picked up another threat. The HOA stopped sending petty violations. People actually waved at us as we walked our dog. Jane went back to teaching. Students clapped for her when she entered the classroom on her first day back. She blushed, actually blushed, and waved them down like the attention embarrassed her. It was the closest I'd seen her to overwhelmed. But even with her job restored and our street quiet again, we weren't done. Because the real reckoning was waiting at the county courthouse. And it was time. The courthouse had that cold, high-ceilinged silence that made everyone whisper. The room was packed, neighbors, teachers, reporters, all filling the wooden benches. Everyone had come to see the fall of a queen. Karen was led into the courtroom in handcuffs. Her hair was disheveled. Her blazer wrinkled. Her eyes were wild. Nothing like the immaculate tyrant who used to stroll through the neighborhood like she owned the pavement beneath her feet. She looked smaller somehow. Lighter. Like someone who had been hollowed out from the inside. Cole followed behind her. He wasn't handcuffed, but he might as well have been. Shoulders slumped. Face pale. He couldn't even look up. He didn't sit next to his mother. He sat several feet away. That said everything. Detective Miller sat beside us, flipping through his notes. "Should be straightforward," he whispered. "Her attorney's already preparing a plea bargain. She doesn't have the leverage for anything else." When the judge entered, everyone rose. And then it began. The prosecutor read through a list so long and detailed that murmurs spread through the benches. Harassment. Conspiracy to commit vandalism. Filing multiple false reports. Stalking. Instigating threats. Tampering with evidence. Interfering with a school investigation. Coordinating an intimidation attempt. Karen collapsed back into her chair with every charge, whispering, "No, no, no," under her breath. Then came the biggest moment. The judge looked at her sternly. "Mrs. Jameson, do you understand that your actions endangered not only this family, but the entire neighborhood?" Karen didn't answer. She simply stared ahead, eyes glassy. "Do you have anything to say before the court proceeds?" And then, for the first time since all this began, she broke. All her arrogance, her smugness, her superiority, every shield she'd built. Gone. Her voice cracked. "I was trying to protect my son." The judge didn't soften. By encouraging him to lie, to commit crimes, to threaten a teacher? Karen shook her head violently. He was supposed to be successful. He was supposed to have a future. I couldn't let anything stop that. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Jameson, the only person who ruined your son's future is you." The room went silent. Karen sobbed. But sympathy? There wasn't much of that left. Next came Cole. He wasn't charged as an adult. But the judge wasn't lenient, either. He stood trembling as the charges were read. Assault. Trespassing. Attempted property damage. Lying to school investigators. When the judge asked for his statement, Cole swallowed hard. For once, he didn't look at his mother. He looked at us. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "To both of you. I shouldn't have done any of it. I was angry about my grade. And my mom, she said she would protect me. I didn't think for myself. I thought I was invincible. His voice broke. I wasn't. For the first time, he sounded like a kid. Not a bully. Not a prince of the neighborhood. Just a foolish, confused teenager caught in the storm of his mother's making. The judge delivered his punishment. 6 months of probation, mandatory counseling, community service, a restraining order preventing him from coming within 500 feet of Jane. His scholarship? Gone. The university withdrew it the same day they saw the footage. Consequences came fast, and they stuck. Then it was Karen's turn. Her punishment was serious. 18 months in county jail, heavy fines for damages, mandatory psychological evaluation, permanent removal from the HOA, 5-year restraining order, a criminal record that would follow her forever. When the judge read the final number, 18 months, Karen collapsed into her chair like someone had unplugged her. Her attorney placed a hand on her shoulder. She brushed him off. She didn't look at us. Not once. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the steps. Cameras snapped. Microphones were pointed in every direction. Mrs. Summers, how do you feel about today's outcome? Do you have a statement? Were you afraid for your life during the attack? Jane simply said, "Justice was done. That's enough." Then she walked away. She didn't need fame. She didn't need attention. She didn't need praise. She had her job back. Her life back. Her peace is back. That was all she wanted. But the community? They wanted more. They wanted to show gratitude. When we turned onto our street, we saw them. Neighbors lined the sidewalks. Kids holding signs. Adults waving. People clapped as we drove slowly toward our house. It wasn't a parade. It was a thank you. A collective sigh of relief that someone had finally stood up to the person who had terrorized them for years. One neighbor stepped forward with a small basket of baked goods. Another brought flowers. Another smiled and said, "We're repainting your mailbox tomorrow. Free of charge." We tried to refuse. They insisted. It wasn't charity. It was appreciation. They walked with us up our driveway. They replaced our broken mailbox. They patched the bullet hole in the yard. They stayed to talk and laugh until the sun went down. For the first time, it felt like we were all on the same side. No fear. No tension. No HOA tyranny. Just neighbors being neighbors. Later that night, Jane and I sat on our porch swing. The street was quiet. The stars were out. The air felt lighter somehow. I looked at her and asked, "Do you think it's finally over?" She took a slow sip of her tea. Then she looked at the peaceful street. The repaired mailbox. The soft porch lights. The quiet hum of crickets. "It's over," she said softly. And we didn't just win. We rebuilt something better. I leaned back, letting her words settle in. And for the first time since the nightmare began, everything felt right. Not perfect. Not magical. Just right. Because when a bully tries to destroy your future, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand your ground. And sometimes, the bully discovers, too late, that their victim was never powerless at all. Especially when that victim has a military past strong enough to crush their entire empire.